Hi, I'm Aris Paduga and I'm your traveling pastor in the beautiful land of Israel, the land of the Bible and the land of God. Welcome to Beit Shean, Scythopolis. Beit Shean is one of the oldest cities in Israel, a magnificent ancient Canaanite city and a glorious Roman city of its day. Beit Shean is in the region of Galilee of northern Israel, and it belongs to the land inheritance of the tribe of Manasseh, one of the sons of Joseph the dreamer. It is 27 kilometers south of the famous Sea of Galilee, and 5 kilometers east of the biblical Jordan River. Also, it is perfectly situated along Via Maris, or the ancient famous Way of the Sea. Today, Beit Shean is considered as one of the largest Roman archaeological sites in the land of Israel. Here in Beit Shean, you'll see a spectacular city. It is a fantastic example of Hellenistic Roman and Byzantine cities, or New Testament cities. The archaeological ruins and history of Beit Shean will surely amaze you, such as the Egyptian governor's house from 12th century BC, a unique Roman bathhouse, a Roman theater for dramatic performances with a seating capacity of 7,000, a Roman amphitheater holding 6,000 people, where gladiatorial contests entertained soldiers of the 6th Legion, which was based here, the 150 meters Palladius Street or Cardo, which is the main street of the city, decorated by a row of marble pillars. Back in history, Beit Shean was settled as early as the Chalcolithic era, which is about 6,000 years ago, and it has remained continually inhabited since then. This place is known for many names such as Tel Beit Shean, Tel El Hushan, Beisan, Nesa, and Scythopolis. Beit Shean was a key city long before the arrival of the Israelites because of its location. The city is listed as one of the cities that were conquered by Egyptian Pharaoh Thutmose III, just after the famous battle near Megiddo in the year 1468 BC, which resulted in the Egyptian conquest of Canaan for 350 years. The name Beit Shean appears in the Bible several times, and it is first mentioned during Joshua's leadership in the book of Joshua, chapter 17, verse 11 to 16, and Judges chapter 1, verse 27, wherein the children of Manasseh failed to conquer and drive out the Canaanites living in Beit Shean and its neighboring cities in those days, because the men are strong and have chariots of iron. The city is mentioned again when the Philistines hung the bodies of King Saul and his sons on the walls of Beit Shean, which we will discuss in the later part of this video. Later, when King David reigned, he conquered Beit Shean. Then it became an important city in the 5th administrative district of King Solomon. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 12. Later, in 732 BC, the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III conquered the northern kingdom of Israel and destroyed Beit Shean. In the 4th century BC, the Greeks became the new settlers and revived Beit Shean with the new name Scythopolis, or City of the Scythians. There's also a tradition that the city was founded by Dionysius, a Greek god of fertility and wine, and his nursemaid Nesa was buried here, calling it as Nesa Scythopolis. And in 63 BC, The city was conquered by the Romans and became a flourishing multicultural Roman city, which also served as one of the key cities of the Roman Empire in the south of Galilee. It was the largest city of the Decapolis, or the League of 10 Hellenized cities that was mentioned in the Gospel during the Galilean ministry of the Lord Jesus Christ. During the reign of the emperors Hadrian, Antonius Pius, and Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century, which was the period of Pax Romana, the Roman Empire enjoyed peace, security, and economic prosperity, wherein Roman cities attained a high level of urban development. And Scythopolis was an outstanding example of impressive high-level urban planning, construction, and accomplishment. However, an enormous earthquake in 749 AD destroyed the city of Beit Shean and never regained its former prominence. Folks, stay tuned as we continue our biblical learning here in Beit Shean.
All right, so before I give you a few background in this area, let's go back to that place, that area. All right, so this is the original place. This one, it represents the mountain there, and we will gonna go up there. All right, so
this one.
that one. All right,
This one.
yes. So that is the original site of the Beit Shean or Beisan. It has many names. And this place is a stronghold of the Canaanites. And then later on, during the time of King Saul, it became the stronghold of the Philistines. And we can read a very tragic story that happened in the Bible, in the book of Samuel, concerning what happened to the life of the first king of Israel. So to find out, let me read to you the passage so that we will become biblical in our discussion or in our trip. So chapter 31 of 1 Samuel, it says here, "Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa." So from this, the Mount Gilboa is somewhere there, and we cannot see it, okay? There, the mountain that I told you while we are on the way. So the battle is there, and the battle is very fierce. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Melchishua, Saul's son. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was sore wounded of the archers. Then said Saul unto his armor bearer, "Draw thy sword, and thrust me through therewith, lest this uncircumcised come and thrust me through." By the way, let's pause for a moment. Why all the time, when the Philistines was mentioned in the Bible, they always connect the word uncircumcised? Okay? Because circumcision, this is God's covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this is an everlasting sign for the Israelites, that God made a covenant with the people of Israel. Whereas, the uncircumcised, this is a term or a word of shaming the Gentiles. Basically, the Philistines. Because that means they don't have any relationship or covenant with God. It's like they're outcasts. It's like that they are rejected by God, and God chose the Israelites. So that's why you will encounter this term uncircumcised Philistines. Also, if you could remember the battle of David against Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, once again the term was mentioned there. This uncircumcised Philistines. So the word circumcised and uncircumcised, it divides two different kinds of people. The Gentile and circumcised. outcast, the circumcised, the Israelites, the chosen, and the blessed people of God. Thanks God. There is no more Gentiles or Jew. There's no more circumcised or uncircumcised in the New Testament. Once you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, you are considered a children of the Lord and heir of Abraham. Let's continue. So additional trivia na lang yun, ano? Come and thrust me through and abuse me, but his armor bearer would not, for he was so afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell upon it. Where this happened? In Mount Gilboa. Saul has no way of escape. So he fell down in his sword and died because he doesn't want to die in the sword of the Philistines. So it's better for him to die and suicide than to die in the hands of their enemies, in the uncircumcised Philistines. 5. And when his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell likewise upon his sword and died with him. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, and all his men that same day together. What a tragic story. A tragic scenario. Saul rose into power as the first king of Israel, but his ending is very tragic. It seems that God abandoned him. It's because there was some points in the life of Saul that he doesn't obey the Lord with all his heart. And God's punishment, his kingdom will not continue. His kingdom will be given to another person who deserved better, and that is David. And since then, God left him. God abandoned him. That's why this time, he never won against the Philistines. What I am telling you there in Mount Tabor, if God is fighting ahead of you, if God is your commander in your battle, your destiny is winning or victory. Now, God abandoned King Saul. God is not helping King Saul. And that's the reason why the Philistines overtook him. And let's continue. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor bearer, all his men. Imagine, that same day, in that very day, they all died in Mount Gilboa. And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, so there in Gilead, okay, the Israelites in Gilead, because there's 2.5 tribes of Israel that stayed there in the other side of the valley, or of Jordan River. And what happened? And when the men of Israel that were on the other side of the valley, and they that were on the other side of Jordan, saw that the men of Israel fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. So the Israelites was fearful because their king has fallen. And then when they left their cities, the Philistines started to live in their cities. And 8, we're very close to end. And it came to pass on the morrow, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen in Mount Gilboa, and they cut off his head. Not only they were defeated, not only all the people died, the Israelites, but most tragically, they cut off, they beheaded Saul, the first king of Israel, and his sons. And then what they did? And stripped off his armor, and sent into the land of the Philistines round about, to publish it in the house of their idols and among the people. That's very important. You see, the strongholds of the Philistines is Beit Shemesh, Ekron, Gaza, and the other side there in the lower part of Judea until Tel Aviv. And they inform all their cities that the king of Israel was defeated. And most of all, they put in the houses of their gods. And what does it stand for? That means their God, the God of the Canaanites, is more mightier or powerful than the God of Israel. That's the kind of message that they are sending to the people of Philistines. And then let's continue. Verse 10. Okay? And they put his armor in the house of Ashtaroth or Asherah, in the other version, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beit Shean. So that's it. So before, in the time of King Saul, that's only the city. This is nothing. Okay? during the Old Testament time, all these things that you can see, this is nothing. So there, it has a wall before, and somewhere there, the body of King Saul and his sons was hung by the Philistines. And then let's continue. And when the inhabitants of Jabes Gilead heard of that which the Philistines had done to Saul, what happened? So the Gilead is there, the mountain that you will see on the other side of Jordan River, the huge mountains there. So they heard what happened to King Saul, and what they did, listen to this in verse 12. And all the valiant men arose and went all night. All night. So from there, they traveled going here in Beit Shean, and what they did, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beit Shean and came back. They go back there in Jabes and burnt them there. And then what? And they took their bones and buried them under a tree at Jabes and fasted 7 days. You see, another tragic part in the life of King Saul. He was born in the land of Benjamin, very close to Jerusalem. That's a long way from here in Beit Shean. But what happened? On his death, very tragic. So he was brought to Gilead, and we don't know what happened then concerning the bones of Saul and his sons. So he was buried away from his home. So that's the story in the Old Testament time. Then, as far as we know, in the history of the world, so later on, the Assyrians came and they conquered northern Israel. And then later on, the Babylonians rose into power and they conquered the land of Israel, and also they conquered Jerusalem. And after the Babylonians came the Persian Empire, and then there was some development in Jerusalem. After Persian came the Greeks, and after the Greeks, the Hasmoneans. After Hasmoneans came the Roman Empire, and during the Roman Empire, they revived the city of Beit Shean, but they abandoned the place, the original site, and they start making the developments around the valley of the Beit Shean. Okay, so this is the thing that you can see. That's why you have Colosseo, and this is for the Roman of the people in those days. So, and these things, most of this, especially this one and there, we could still see these things there. All right. Now, I cannot discuss everything to you because it will take more time. But if you have time, try to search in Google or in Wikipedia. And last of all, this place in the New Testament, you cannot find the word Beit Shean, but you can find the word Scythian, and it was called Scythopolis in the New Testament time. And then it belongs to a league of cities during the time of the Romans that is called Decapolis, which means polis city and Deca is 10. So there is a collaboration of 10 Roman cities in the Promised Land or in the land of Israel, and Beit Shean is one of the Decapolis. And the Lord Jesus Christ, according to the biblical narratives, you have to search the word Decapolis in the New Testament. The Lord Jesus Christ keeps on traveling in Decapolis. That means he went to the 10 major Roman cities during his time. That's why we can say one time the Lord Jesus Christ was in this famous city of Beit Shean. So that's a little trivia that you need to learn, that you need to know, because if you don't know the names, the places, you will never find out that Christ was in this place. Alright? So now, since I could not discuss everything to you, I am giving you time to explore this magnificent, wonderful, awesome, the largest archaeological site in the land of Israel. Welcome to Beit Shean. Alright? So, Toda Rabba. God bless you mga kapatid.
Folks, thank you for joining us here today at Beit Shean. Kindly subscribe and feel free to share our travels. God bless you, and to God be the glory.